Hola, it's Beto here, your daily divinity coach, here for Tested by Fire Revisited. It is Sunday, October 12th, 2025. I'm going to go ahead and see if we can't get an audience going and tag some folk here. Let's see, let's invite some people and see who's available to join us. So again, just inviting some people here, see if we can get a live audience going. And that'll be a lot of fun. So here we go, making the invites. So again, this is Bethel for Tested by Fire Revisited, and just sending out some invites to see who might be able to join us this morning. So just bear with me here, and we're sending out some invites to see who's around. Let's see who else we might want to join us. I think that might be about it. Let's see if there's a couple more that want to join. And again, this is Bethel. I'm just putting out my feelers to see if we can get a group here this morning for today's show. So, and this is Tested by Fire Revisited. Okay, I think that should be enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go live on Instagram as well and do the same thing. So just hang tight. If you're watching via recording, just go ahead and fast forward a few minutes while I get set up here. So again, I'm just going live on Instagram. We're live on Facebook, and we're going to get a group going here. Let's see. Just got to delete this. And then we'll get going soon here. So we're gonna go live on Instagram. Hello. Let me see. Gotta turn this around. All right. It looks like we're live on Instagram. So let me put in a title here. Tested by Fire Revisited. And then I'm going to put in the date. Today is Sunday, October 12th, 2025. And again, just bear with me if you're already watching live. I'm just getting set up here on Instagram. And oh, it says that my feature is not available on Instagram. That's interesting. I wonder why that is. Well, we are on Facebook, so that's good. So hopefully we can get live on Instagram soon. I've never had this problem before. Let's see. This time your account is not eligible for this feature. Let's see if we can get in Instagram a different way. Let's try it this way. Now you can go live. All right, so again, this is Bethel. I'm known as your daily divinity coach. I'm here for Tested by Fire Revisited. It is Sunday, October 12th, 2025. So again, just trying to get an audience going. So if you're watching the recorded video, feel free to go ahead and fast forward. Let's try this again. For some reason, they're not wanting me to go live on Instagram, saying that my that your account is not eligible for this feature. Again, I've done many of these and I've never had this problem, so I'm not sure exactly why. But I guess we'll just go ahead and do it via Facebook then, and I'll try Instagram later and see what happens. So again, this is Bethel. I'm your daily divinity coach. We're here for Tested by Fire Revisited. Today is Sunday, October 12th, 2025. And so just a tiny bit about myself before we get into the content of the show. So I am a burn survivor, hence the title, Tested by Fire. I was burned in an apartment building fire 2 years ago today. Today's my burn anniversary. So it's 2 years ago today, October 12th of 2023, and I was severely burned in an apartment building fire. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and my journey along the way the last 2 years as a burn survivor. I did want to, I do print out an intro here because I want to make sure that I get my thank yous and all that stuff done correctly. So about 4 months ago, or no, 4 months after the fire, I did come on Instagram and Facebook Live and gave a testimonial named Tested by Fire. And hence here we are 2 years later with Tested by Fire Revisited. There have been 3 major changes in my life since that original Tested by Fire, and we'll talk about these during the show today. But just real quickly, the 3 major changes. Number 1, after nearly 4 years of eating a vegan plant-based diet, I'm no longer eating a vegan plant-based diet. So that's one major change over the last 2 years. Number 2, I'm now a certified peer supporter, what they call a SOAR peer supporter for burn survivors. So I'm certified hospital volunteer for Mass General Hospital and for Spalding Rehab Hospital. And I go into those hospitals and I meet with and provide peer support for recent burn survivors. And then the third thing is I'm back in the Catholic Church. I had been baptized and did my Holy Communion, my first confession when I was a young child, and then my parents became Protestants. And so I was away from the Catholic Church, from my original faith for when I was a little boy for 40 years. And my journey as a burn survivor has taken me back to the Catholic Church. So we'll talk about that. And then there are a few people that I want to thank that have helped me in this faith journey along the way. And that is Father Joe McCarthy, priest at St. John the Evangelist Church here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Father Medico Santos of St. Peter Parish here in Cambridge. The Monsignor Kevin O'Leary at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross in Boston. And Father David Tarasi of the Cathedral of the Holy Cross in Boston. And somebody who's very instrumental as I made that shift from being a Protestant back to being a Catholic, and that was Reverend Dr. Jeremy Battle of Western Avenue Baptist Church and Harvard Divinity School, where I also attended. So those are my thank yous, and we'll go ahead and start with the content of the show. So again, actually let me try to go one more time and see if Instagram lets me go live. One more time. No, for some reason it's not letting me go. We'll have to figure that out another time. So for those of you on Facebook Live, again, this is Tested by Fire Revisited. It is Sunday, October 12, 2025, and it's been 2 years. Today's my burn anniversary. It's been 2 years since I was burned in an apartment building fire. And again, 4 months after the fire, I came on live on Facebook and Instagram and gave a testimonial called Tested by Fire. Now it's been 2 years, so I thought I'd come back and share my story again 2 years out and call it Tested by Fire Revisited. So again, I'm Beto, also known on Instagram and Facebook as your daily divinity coach. So let's start, actually let's start what was going on in my life a few months before the fire. So the fire happened on October 12, 2023, but I want to go back to May and talk about the buildup to the fire. So back in May of 2023, my son Coltrane was injured. He suffered an injury while playing rugby. He ended up tearing his ACL and his meniscus, and it was his senior night. All of his, not all, but a bunch of his teachers, his family, a lot of his friends came out to watch his senior night, his last home game, playing rugby for his high school, Cambridge Regional Latin here, just across the river from Boston. And he ended up tearing his ACL and his meniscus. He played half the game. They ended up winning, which was awesome. But that led us on a journey of him needing surgery, going through rehab to be able to walk again. And so that was that summer of 2023. We had grand plans. He was supposed to go out and play in a major international rugby tournament in Salt Lake City that summer. It would have been his second time out there. He was supposed to lead his club team to the state championship that summer, but all those plans were washed away when he came down with that serious knee injury, again tearing his meniscus and his ACL. So we went through the surgery, went through the rehab, and while all that was going on, my mom fell. She fell, suffered a serious injury to her pelvis, and so she was hospitalized. And then shortly after that, my brother attempted suicide. So there's a lot going on that summer leading up to the fire. My son then ended up we were able to get him walking again, the rehab and everything, and so he went off to college. And so I became an empty nester. And then shortly thereafter, my mom passed away. And then shortly thereafter, she passed away in September. My son went off to college at the end of August, and then in October was the apartment building fire. And so what happened? It was early morning on October 12, 2023, and my neighbor, I live in an apartment building here in Cambridge, across the river from Boston, and my neighbor was attempting to recharge his electric bike. And I typically would have been already at the gym, because I typically would wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm gone to the gym. But that morning I had recently come back from the West Coast, where we had funeral services for my mom. So I was grieving, I was tired, and then my neighbor and his friends down below, because I was on a second floor, their first floor apartment, had a party or whatever, so it's hard to get to sleep. So anyway, I decided I was going to skip the gym that morning and sleep in a little bit. And I was awakened, it was around somewhere between 6 and 6:30 a.m. And typically, kids are getting ready to go to school and all that type of stuff. And so it's kind of noisy. But I was awakened by a loud sound. I didn't know what it was. And so it was real quick. Everything happened very fast. And the neighbor down below had disassembled his fire alarm. So we had no warning. All of a sudden, the alarm in the hallway went off, and it said, "Fire, fire, fire." And I was like, whoa, I was still in bed. So I threw on a pair of jeans, no shirt, no shoes, and ran to my front door to open it. And here were 10-foot tall flames of fire and smoke coming right at me. This coming at me from the front door. I lived about less than 10 paces to the front door. So the back door was about 30, 35 paces. So I tried to exit out the back door. I took a run for it, and I ended up getting knocked down by the flames of the fire about halfway to the back door. My lung collapsed, so I was immobilized. I was literally on the floor of the hallway, apartment building hallway, just immobilized, couldn't move, collapsed lung. I ended up suffering cyanide poisoning. My vision was impaired. It was all dark, dense smoke in that hallway, so couldn't see barely anything. Everything was, the debris was in my eyes. I ended up coming down with severe second-degree burns to my face, my neck, my scalp, my hand, my arm, my feet, and I was losing consciousness. I had lost my sense of direction. I didn't know what was north, south, east, west. I had no idea. I was losing consciousness, and I just thought, this is it. I'm gonna end up leaving the earth now. It's over. But another thought came to my mind, well, I should say that as I was thinking about this at the end, sleep felt really good, because when your lung collapses and you're in a mess like that, sleep just feels really good. And I was like, wow, I can do this. I can just go, fall asleep, and it's over. But then another thought came into my mind, and that was about my two sons. And I was like, I need to find a way out of here. I can't have my sons growing up the rest of their lives, these two young men, with their dad being, having died in a fire. But I was immobilized. I couldn't move. I literally couldn't move. And so I didn't know what to do. Like I said, I just recently come back from attending funeral services for my recently deceased mom. And so whenever I was in trouble in the past, I'd always call my mom. Obviously there's no phone there, I can't call my mom, she's passed away. So I just cried out. I cried out for my mom. And next thing I know, I'm outside the back door of the apartment building on my feet, safe, but still on fire. And so I found a neighbor in another building that wasn't on fire, because there's various apartment buildings in this complex. And she kindly let me into her bathroom so I could, put water on myself, get rid of the fire. Again, I was still on fire. So I did that, went outside, the fire trucks and the ambulance were still not there yet. So went back again to the neighbor's apartment, and she let me douse myself again with water. And then I came back, and at that time the ambulance was there. So I walked about 100 meters or so on bare feet, all burned up, to the ambulance. And then the ambulance took me to Massachusetts General Hospital. So I'm sure you're wondering, how did I get out, right? That's the question on everybody's mind when I tell this story. It was a miracle. It was a miracle. The firefighters, when they finally did show up, it was after I'd already escaped. It took them 22 minutes to get to my apartment. So if I hadn't escaped, I would have been unrecognizable. I would have been dead and unrecognizable. Having said that, they had to be safe, right? The structure was all aflame. They had to find a safe entry in and stuff like that. They did put out the fire, but by then the apartment building was condemned. It was done, right? It wasn't the firefighters. It wasn't a neighbor that saved me. Like I said, I was immobilized. I couldn't get out. I believe it was God. All glory to God. Thanks be to God that I got out and was able to escape that fire. After a few months of recovery, I was under severe PTSD. And I asked God, I said, how did I get out? How did I get out of the fire? And I saw a vision. I saw a vision of my mom there in the fire with me. And she commanded me with her eyes. She commanded me to my feet. And then she guided me out of the fire. And then, like I said, once I was out, there was nobody around. She wasn't there. Later, just recently, a couple months ago, my tia, my aunt, my mom's baby sister, who's very, very spiritual, she called me and she said, I saw a vision of you in that fire. It was very dense, dark smoke. You were lying on the floor of the hallway. And she said, but there was somebody else there with you. And I said, well, I believe God sent my mom to get me out of there. She said, no, I saw someone or something or a figure run by you. And I said, no, there's no neighbor, there's nobody. It was just me, and like I said, I believe God sent my mom to get me out of there. And she said, no, my vision, there's a figure, a dark figure running in through that dense dark smoke. And I said, oh my goodness, that had to be the devil. Because when I came out of that fire and I was trying to run back, I felt the presence of the devil. And so what I believe now, the full story that happened, when I put my vision and my tia's vision together, is that God sent my mom from heaven, and she ran off the devil, who was there to kill me, right? The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And she ran off the devil, Satan, Lucifer, and then commanded me to my feet with her eyes, and then guided me out of the burning hallway, the burning building. So that's what I believe happened. Again, all thanks to God that I'm still here, that I'm still alive. So I was taken by ambulance to Mass General Hospital, and I was taken to the emergency room. And I was given my own room, and as I was in the emergency room, they're waiting for a room in the burn unit, the 14th floor, the Ellison building there in Mass General Hospital, where the burn unit is. They're waiting for a room to become available in the ICU. But it took a few hours, and so I was in the emergency room. I had my own room, and as time passed, the hallway started to fill up with people on these beds. And I asked the nurse, I said, why don't you just give one of the people in the hallway my room, and I'll go out in the hallway. I have no problem with that. See, I was still in shock. I was still in shock, and the nurse said, with all due respect, sir, there's nobody worse off than you are right now in this emergency room. So at that point, my anxiety just went through the roof. Thank God my son showed up. Before I went to the ambulance, my neighbor let me use her phone, and I called my former spouse, my former wife, and I said, tell Coltrane, tell my son what's going on. I don't know where they're going to take me. I'm not in good shape, but he'll find me. And he had, a senior year of high school, he had interned on an ambulance as an EMT trainee. And so he had been to Mass General Hospital before with burn survivors. He had taken them there in the ambulance. So he knew where I would be, so he found me, and thank God he helped quell my anxiety, because my anxiety was through the roof. I'm the worst one in all of Mass General Hospital, right in Boston. I'm the worst case, right? This morning, or that day on October 12, 2023. So you can imagine my anxiety is sky high. I haven't been in the hospital since I was a little boy, and also they said I might have cornea damage, right? Permanent damage or severe damage to my sight. And so it's just a scary, scary time. But my son, he really calmed me down. He said, Dad, they're going to take good care of you here. I've seen worse. And so he's really, really strong for me. I didn't know it, but he ended up leaving the room and calling my tia, my mom's youngest sister, and crying and crying and crying. My dad, my dad, my dad. And but when he was with me, he showed a lot of strength, which is what I needed at that time. Obviously they gave me pain medication. I didn't want it, but I was in shock, and they said you're going to need it. So obviously I let them give it to me. They wanted to intubate me, but I said no. I said, who's in charge? Because there's like 13 people. When they took me into the ER, the EMT said there's going to be 13 people, and then there's going to be nobody. And so sure enough, 13 people showed up, and they're talking about what they're going to do to me. And I said, and I heard the word intubation, and I remember from the COVID days, the people who were intubated, it was high danger of pneumonia, and via the intubation, all of that. And so I said, who's in charge? And a gentleman raised his hand. He said, I'm in charge. I said, what's your name? He said, Ali. I said, Ali, we're not gonna intubate me. And he said, all due respect, sir, you should have already been intubated. He said, but I'm gonna go ahead and call down the surgeons from the burn unit, and they'll do an evaluation. And they did. They did an evaluation. They came down from the 14th floor. They did an evaluation. They said, you know what, we agree with the patient. He doesn't need to be intubated. And so instead, when I was in the burn unit, the surgeon said, you got to walk. You got to walk. And I walked and I walked and I walked, to get all the junk out, right, that was inside of me. They have pictures of me from the burn unit, my mouth, my throat, everything, lungs just all black, right? All black inside, because I was burning to death from the inside out. In addition to the severe second-degree burns to my face and my neck, my scalp, my arm, my hands, my legs. So I was a mess. But once I got to the burn unit, they finally had a room open up in the ICU at the burn unit. I just felt a lot calmer, because I knew, these people know what to do. They know how to take care of me. And sure enough, I got world-class care there in the burn unit. And I can't tell you what the pain is indescribable. Recently, I'm a peer support survivor, so I go back into the hospital now, Mass General Hospital, Spalding Rehab Hospital. I talk to, recent burn survivors. And I was talking to one a few weeks ago, and he said, Beto, he said, I've been stabbed, I've been shot, I've been run over, but nothing compares to the pain of these burns. So it's really indescribable, especially when you have to shower and the water hits the burns that first time, and then you have to scrub, the open wounds, and just indescribable pain. No matter how much pain medication they give you, it just barely takes off the edge just enough to be able to scrub. but just indescribable pain. And then that first night, the PTSD hit. I fell asleep that first night in the burn unit, and then had a dream that I was right back on the floor of the burning building, burning to death, and it freaked me out. And so I got up and I just started pacing. They ended up calling psych. Psych came that next morning and evaluated me, and they said, "This is very normal. Your mind is just trying to make sense of what just happened to you." And they came down a couple more times to visit, and we talked, and they said, "No, everything that you're going through in your head right now, it's very normal. You're just processing everything." So I was in there. I was in the burn unit for 8 days and 7 nights. Again, had tremendous care. A couple of the nurses who were there for me are still there when I go back to visit. My ICU nurse, Maddie from Chicago, she remembered me. She remembered everything. It's more than I did. It's something else. It's like going full circle now that I'm back there, and the nurses remember me, and I'm doing the best I can to support recent burn survivors, which is it's a gift, because when I was in the burn unit, a burn survivor had reached out and spent time with me, and that was a true gift. So it's a blessing to be back in the burn unit, to be able to provide peer support to new burn survivors there at Mass General Hospital. And I also go to Spaulding Rehab Hospital when they call me. And it's Mass General, I go regularly. About either every week or every other week. And then Spaulding Rehab, sometimes they have burn survivors there too, and they'll give me a call and I'll go out. So again, I was there for 8 days and 7 nights. And then I was sheltered in a hotel because my apartment building was condemned. My son from the West Coast, Wisdom, who's actually now in Chicago, he came out for 2 weeks to help me. My son Coltrane was actually off school, off of college that week, so he was there for a few days with me, and then he'd come on the weekends. I had tremendous support from friends, from family, from colleagues. I had no place for my son Wisdom to stay when he came out to visit me, but it was tremendous. People took up a collection so that points, hotel points, so that Wisdom can stay in different hotels while he was out here. A Marriott, a Holiday Inn, Hilton. So he's kind of moving around, but he's able to stay for free for those 2 weeks because of the Hilton and Marriott and Holiday Inn rewards that people donated. Because when people called the burning and said, "What do you need?" I said, "I need a place for my son to stay." So people are very kind. I got so many phone calls and text messages. I couldn't answer them all. My phone was left in the fire, so my son got me a new phone. But in the meantime, people found me, and they're calling the hospital phone. And so I wasn't able to get to everybody, but I thank you so much, those that reached out. People sent me gift baskets, sent donations, so many that I can't thank everybody. But I thank everybody who supported me, who supported my sons during that time. It was tremendous, tremendous support, and I thank you all very much. People visited me when I was in Mass General Hospital, and also when I was in the hotel, sheltered in the hotel. So thank you for all of your support. So then once I got out of the hospital, it was about rehabbing, right? Rehabbing all my injuries. I had a traveling nurse visiting me. I was going to outpatient care, going to see my PCP, trying to get back at it, trying to get physically better. And I'd say just as I was kind of crossing that threshold of, feeling a little bit better, not so, messed up, is when the PTSD really started kicking in. And it was just about that time when I came on. It was about 4 months after when I came on here, and I did my Tested by Fire, the original Tested by Fire. And so right after, the PTSD just really kicked in. I mean, it was something else. And actually, I was sheltered when I started. When I was sheltered in the hotel because they had I guess a grease fire in the hotel kitchen. Alarms went off, and it was just like in the movies. I felt like I was two places at once. I felt like I was back in the apartment building fire. At the same time, I'm in the hotel, you know, trying to get out of the hotel to safety because now there's a hotel fire, and it was just being two places at once, and it was crazy. I ended up getting another apartment, at least another apartment while my apartment is being renovated and fixed up and whatnot. And it happened again here. There's a fire, a real fire in this building, and I freaked out and everything and went running out, and I was like, oh my goodness, this PTSD is really bad. That's when I asked God to show me, you know, what happened to me, and I had that vision of my mom. God sending my mom to get me, my recently deceased mom, to get me out of that burning burning apartment building. So the PTSD was brutal, but you know, I asked God, what do I do? Like, is there a strategy to help with this? And I just heard celebrate life. So like, I'm okay. So I went to the Bible and I'm like looking up celebrate life and reading passages in scriptures. And I decided that, you know, King David celebrated life, he danced, right? So I should dance. So I ended up taking up ballroom dance. A beautiful instructor, just really wonderful instructor here in Cambridge. Her studio was called Q Ballroom. She closed it down, but it's been reopened under another name. Hella is her name, and just been wonderful. Supporter, and that's just been tremendous, and it really helped a lot with the PTSD. But yeah, so I ended up taking up ballroom dance. So that was tremendous. But what really helped with the PTSD was one night I was in bed, and I saw a vision of my front door, outside my front door, and it was my mom. And she was commanding these two big angels. They were like 9 feet tall. I only saw the back of the angels. And she was commanding them, like telling them to watch over my new apartment, my new place where I'm staying. And and I remember saying something about my son or my sons. And then I saw like just flashes of lights, like she was sending the angels, guardian angels, to my sons as well. And I was like, wow. And then, you know, I ended up going to sleep and waking up the next day, and my son Coltrane was with me here in my apartment where I'm staying now, and the fire alarm went off, and it was a real fire, but this time I was calm. I wasn't like all freaked out, and Coltrane said he was watching me to see how I was going to react, and I was calm. We went outside. One of the firemen, Coltrane, my son actually knew him, and they put out the fire. We were able to go back. And so it was that vision of my mom, who I call my spirit guide, or my guiding spirit, commanding the guardian angels to watch over us, that really like started calming me down from all that you know, that trauma, that PTSD. Obviously the ballroom dance helped too. As I'm kind of like getting over that hurdle, financial despair like just came crashing down. People were very generous, and I had a tiny bit of insurance on my apartment, but it just a tiny bit. I mean, our losses were catastrophic, financial losses from the fire. So everything kind of started hitting me financially, and it was just really hard and indescribable. Just the losses and the financial tragedy. And so I started praying. I started fasting and praying. The scripture came to my head, and obviously I went to the Bible to verify, but the scripture that my mom had taught me, that certain demons can only be cast out through prayer and fasting. And so I started fasting. I started with 24 hours twice a week, then went to, and at that time I wasn't eating, you know, meat or any animal products. So I fast a full 24 hours, and I have one meal, a vegan, you know, plant-based meal. So I do that twice a week, and then I moved up to 3 times a week, and then I started doing 48-hour fast, each week, and I moved up to 72-hour fast, and I did that 3 times, and that was the big one. And I was able to, I believe, break the curse of generational poverty that was, just beating me down. And so that was tremendous. And as soon as I broke that curse, or soon thereafter anyhow, I saw a vision of the archangels. And I should stop right now and say that I'd seen, visions and had dreams before, but never like these, right? Never so real. And I haven't done a lot of research about people who've had near-death experience or face-down death like I have. But I imagine, there's a transformation in the spiritual realm where you just see visions and dreams, and things just become more real spiritually, right? So I had a dream of 2 archangels. I believe it was Michael and Gabriel, although I know there are others. And how did I know they were archangels? Because they were showing personality. They were flying around, and they're enjoying being angels. And it was just amazing. They were high up, and they had huge wingspans. And so I remember after that I did some research, how did I know they're archangels? And I knew instantly, but how do I really know? What's the verifiable proof? And sure enough, it said there, as in my research, that archangels show personality. They have, personality, and they have really wide wingspans, and that's what I saw. Whereas with the guardian angels, when I did my research about the guardian angels, my research said that they're about 9 feet tall, and I knew that as soon as I saw them, because my mom was around 5'1", maybe 5'2" on her best day, and she was looking way up to these angels, and so I knew that they were guardian angels because of their height, being around 9 feet tall. So anyhow, going back to the archangels, so I saw those archangels, and I was like, wow, the archangels are out there fighting for me, right? They're fighting for me. And that generational curse has been broken. I felt it, although things haven't manifested yet in the material world. I know it's going to happen because I seen the vision, right? I did the fast. I broke that generational curse, that 3-day fast, and praying and had that vision. So that was tremendous. But then shortly after that, the grief hit. I mean, it hit like a ton of bricks. From what I understand now, is that first year after the fire, I was, in survival mode, right? I was in survival mode, and then, so I wasn't really grieving my losses. First of all, the loss of my mom, but also, I lost my apartment. My son and I lost all of our possessions. Hope, right? Immediate hope of the future was kind of just kind of vanished because I was in survival mode. So all of a sudden, all of this grief just came pounding on me. I did end up joining a grief support group. There's a free group here in Cambridge through Mount Auburn Hospital. Great group. And that really helped me because the chaplain who facilitates the group, I was able to tell her what was going on with me, and she said, this is normal, after a year, especially somebody like you who's been through multiple losses, losing your mom, losing your apartment, becoming an empty nester, all these things. It's normal for that first year to be in survival mode, and now you're actually grieving, it's time to grieve. And so, it was something else, that grief. Again, I joined the grief support group, which was tremendous. It gave me an understanding of what was going on inside of me. Also at that time, I went back to church. I started with a Baptist church, the Reverend Dr. Jeremy Battles Church. He's, again, Harvard Divinity School, like me. He teaches preaches in the African American tradition, the Baptist and the Pentecostal tradition, and he was a tremendous support. And it was from starting there that I ended up going back to the Catholic Church. And as I said earlier, I had not been a Catholic, attended Mass since I was a tiny boy. I did go, I was baptized originally in the Catholic Church. I did my first communion, my Holy Communion, my first confession. But as a little boy, when I was a little boy, my parents took us, our family, to the Protestant church. So I hadn't been back. You know, it's 40 years. I like to say 40 years in the wilderness. Because my parents, my dad was into that whole mega church thing in the 80s. And it wasn't for me, but, you know, I was a kid. So, you know, that's what we did. We went to church, and he was into that whole mega church thing. He'd watch the televangelist. But I always knew it wasn't for me, you know, being, you know, Mexican, Chicano, and like that. You know, a lot of that theology, you know, it's mixed in with the mega churches. They got a lot of that Southern Baptist stuff, at least in the 80s they did. And it just never resonated with me. I always knew it wasn't a fit for me. But, you know, I was a kid. I did what my parents did. As soon as I got out of college, though, I made a decision to join Victory Outreach Church, an inner city church, which resonated more with me, right? At Chicano, you know, almost there, not all, but I think 99% of my church, Chicano, right? Mexican, my pastor, and I was able to do prison ministry. I was able to go into the youth prisons and minister, and I just loved that. I mean, it was so fulfilling. But then again, that church, although I love it, they do wonderful work. The theology just didn't really resonate with me. I was, you know, college, I was MECHA, I was, you know, an organizer and stuff. I was into social justice, and, you know, that the Victory Outreach is, their theology is more aligned with the Assemblies of God. And so, although I love the ministry, the theology just didn't resonate with me. And again, nothing against the church. They do wonderful work, but it just wasn't for me. And so, I was at that time, and that was, geez, like 20 years ago. I was at that time going to go back to the Catholic Church, but maybe it was more than 20 years. Maybe my numbers are getting mixed up. But anyway, it was around that time of that spotlight when all that came out with the scandals in the Catholic Church. And I was like, this isn't really a good time to go back to the Catholic Church. So I ended up, again, I was really into social justice and whatnot, and I ended up joining a United Church of Christ, a UCC church, which is obviously very progressive. I came back here to Boston from the West Coast, and I did some ministry there. I was a deacon for a couple of years, and the theology resonated with me, but it was a bit of a dying church. But, you know, so that was my background in Protestantism, with my parents being, you know, into the mega church thing, me being into the inner city ministry, the prison ministry, and then later on being a deacon with the mainline United Church of Christ. So I say all that to say this, that I hadn't been back to the Catholic Church in 40 years. But because of all the mystical experiences I had, the Protestant church, it was just really hard. And, you know, it just didn't resonate anymore, right? And so I felt the calling back to the Catholic Church. And one day it was just too much, and I said, this is it, I'm going back. So I went, I attended Mass here in Cambridge, and, you know, began sharing my story with a few of the priests. And again, it resonated because it's the mystical Catholic Church, right? Miracles, right? I started reading about the saints and what they'd been through and the miracles. Some were saved from fire, right? Some levitated. Just, you know, it just all resonated because my experiences since the fire have been so mystical. The visions of the archangels and the guardian angel. And so I started to feel really at home. Having said that, I didn't, you know, I had the Hail Mary, I had the Our Father, I had a couple of the prayers memorized, but I didn't have the Mass memorized. So, you know, and I had to go back and study the theology again. The saints, the works of the saints helped out a lot. I started watching podcasts of the exorcists, the Catholic exorcists, which helped out a lot. You know, read the Council of Trent, did a lot of reading, you know, attended Mass a lot, started attending adoration, you know, going to confession again, was led to the Latin Mass. So I go to both. I go to the English Mass and the Latin Mass, and that's been tremendous because, you know, I know it's the mystery of faith, right? When the priest goes and the bread and wine, right, is turned into, you know, the Eucharist is turned into the body, the flesh and blood of Jesus, of Christ. But I never could totally understand, and I know it's the mystery where it's all faith, but when I went to the Latin Mass, I was called to the Latin Mass, and again, I do both still. I really understood, right? It made more sense to me that how that's, how the bread and wine, the Eucharist becomes the body and blood of Christ in the Latin Mass. Why is that? Well, when I go to the English Mass, it's like 30, 45 minutes, and it's great. But when you go to the Latin Mass, or at least, the Latin Mass that I attend here in Boston at the cathedral, it's 2 hours. It's 2 hours, and it's just so mystical. The incense and the bells and just everything that's going on, the movements. And then, I get there half hour before. So, and we do the rosary together, right? As a community, we do the rosary before the Mass. And then there's times when I go even earlier than that, because if you want to go to confession, you're there at 9, and then, the Mass ends at 12. So you can be there for up to 3 hours. And it's just, the mysticism helped me to understand how all this, how this works, how, the mystery of faith. So it's been tremendous to me. So after going to the church, back to the Catholic Church for a few months, doing all the readings and the studyings, getting all my sacramentals, right? This is the miraculous medal here. I also have, I don't want to get off camera too much, but I got my candles, I got my rosary, doing all of that. Then one day I had a vision. I had a vision of Our Lady, but Our Lady, meaning our, as Mexicans, the Chicana, Our Lady, right? La Virgen de Guadalupe had a vision. And I just started crying like a baby, because during that period of grief, I just felt very unsafe. And all of a sudden I had that vision, and I felt safe. I felt safe, and it was mystical, it was miraculous. And I did some research after to make sure that was La Virgen de Guadalupe that I had seen. And sure enough, the research that I did said that if La Virgen is, Our Lady is looking down on you, then that's a sign that is, the vision that you saw was La Virgen of Guadalupe, de Guadalupe, Our Lady. And so again, at that time I was going through tremendous grief and feeling very unsafe. And all of a sudden, I just felt awashed in safety. I just felt so comforted, and it was just such a beautiful vision. So that helped with the grief. And then after that, I went through like this crisis of vocation, is what I like to call it, where I'm like, okay, I got all of this is happening, and I'm so grateful. Like, what do I do with all of this? And thank God that was the time when I was approved to be a peer supporter, and to be able to go and to be, and a volunteer at the hospital, to be able to go back and help others. And so, but I wanted, I'm like, am I supposed to do more? Am I supposed to be a deacon or a priest, or because I felt the call, but I went through that whole time of vocation, but I realized, I'm meant to be who I am, right? I'm meant to be a father. I'm meant to be a hospital volunteer. I've done, when I was a kid, those original sacraments, right? Baptism and Holy Communion and First Confession. But, it's time to finish the sacraments. So I'm waiting on confirmation. I hope to have that done soon. I've talked to the Monsignor several times, and he's working on some dates with the bishop. So hopefully I'll be confirmed soon. I look forward to finishing that sacrament, and then of course marriage. I have no idea, but I am eligible to be married in the Catholic Church. I went through all of that with the Monsignor. It's funny, as we were going through that process, the Monsignor says, "Wait a minute, are you seeing anybody?" I said, "No, I'm not seeing anybody." He's like, "Oh, okay." I said, "No, I want to get all of this done. I want to get everything done so that I am eligible, so that when God brings the right person along, I can complete that sacrament as well. Complete confirmation and complete the sacrament of marriage." So yeah, it's been something else. It's been quite the journey. It's been 2 years now, and I just felt really compelled to come back here. Facebook Live, for whatever reason, Instagram's not being cooperative today, but here on Facebook Live to give my testimony of what it's been the last 2 years since I was burned within a breath of death, is what I like to say, within a breath of death. And the miracles, the visions that I've experienced since then, the mysticism, and how it's brought me full circle in my faith journey back to the faith of my childhood, my original faith, and how much that's meant to me. Thank all those who've helped me the last 2 years, and I'm just really excited about what the future brings. Again, like I said, I'm waiting to be confirmed, and hopefully when the right person comes along, God brings the right person to complete the sacrament of marriage in the Catholic Church. So if you know of anybody, what else? Well, I'm just, all glory to God, right? I'm just so in love with God, you know, Jesus, our Comforter, our Holy Spirit. Just so grateful to Our Lady, right? La Virgen de Guadalupe, to the archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael. So grateful to my guardian angel, to my spirit guide, to all the saints that are interceding for me, not the least of which is St. Jude Thaddeus. I had the pleasure of being able to visit the shrine of St. Jude Thaddeus in San Francisco. It was so much bigger when I was a kid. When I was a little kid, my grandmother used to take me there, and she had a devotion to St. Jude Thaddeus. So I was able to go there, get some blessed oil that's blessed in the presence of a relic of St. Jude Thaddeus. So very special to me. I also got a candle. I got a statue of Virgen. So yeah, I'm so grateful to the saints that are interceding for me, and I'm so grateful for all those that have helped me. So grateful to be able to be here and to share my story. I hope it's been inspiring. If you have questions, I'm always available. Please reach out. And yeah, I'm just full of God's love, and I'm just grateful for God's mercy, for God's graces. I'm a miracle. I'm a marvel. It's a marvel that I'm alive. It's a miracle, and it's all glory and honor be to God. And thank you so much for watching my show. I'm going to go ahead and save this, so if you missed any part of it, you want to go back and watch it, please do. If you want to share it, please do. And may God bless the rest of your Sunday. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off now. Bye. Ciao.